Once again, time for Taking You Home. Once again, Brandon Johnson. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Bob.
Alrighty, the government shutdown, perhaps the longest in our government's
Yes.
history, right? So what does that do to the business of real estate?
Yeah, so it affects it kind of what I would say in an indirect way. There's no direct stoppages. We're going on 30 plus days, right? And hopefully the end is in sight. But it's just some things to be aware of. What I would also say is when we have a state shutdown, which has happened previously, that, in my opinion, is more impactful to the local real estate market than the national shutdown. And the reason being is we have a lot of state-funded loan programs that are directly impacted for a state program versus a national shutdown.
Okay.
That being said, currently, the main aspects when people say how does that affect us in real estate, what they're referring to is the lending programs, whether it's conventional financing, HUD, FHA loans, VA, rural development, and so we can kind of go through them one by one. Conventional should not be affected at all, theoretically. The USDA or rural development, which are somewhat common here in central Minnesota, they are not issuing any new originations currently. So that's something we as agents just need to be aware of. They're processing any loans that are in place. They're basically working on limited skeleton staff. So they're not issuing new USDA loans.
But it's going to take extra time.
Yes, and that's the theme with all of these, whether it's VA, anything, is the time constraints for government, any government programs, not just loans, whether it's passports, the IRS, all of that. But you just got to be prepared, and some of the indirect things are once in a while you'll get requests from your lender about your tax documents that you need to go, and that's just going to take longer to get those documents. So those are the type of indirect ways that are affected by the shutdown. Is you aren't blocked from getting a loan, but there may be documents that you need that just take longer because of the nature of the documents.
Sure, and I could see where that would really be a pain in the neck because my house is sold, I'm buying a new one, oh my gosh, I got to be out of my house, what am I going to do?
Yeah, and so they're few and far between at this point. I mean, there's things like, so the EPA is affected, so any wetland delineations that are needed, things like that, but again, those are not the norm, but there's situations that everyone's situation might be affected in various ways, but they're just things to be aware of. For instance, another one is you are not able to get new flood insurance or renew flood insurance policies. So if you're purchasing, and in Stearns County, that's there are areas where in certain areas along the rivers that are in floodplains and require flood insurance if you're getting a loan. So those are the things to be aware of.
Okay, so basically we're talking not commercial situations, right? I see on your papers here today we have no SBA loans. That would be like for commercial real estate?
Yeah, exactly. So in businesses, so they're not issuing new small business loans, which does not, again, that's a different tangent than residential real estate.
Right.
But that is an aspect of how the government shutdown can affect, businesses and indirectly real estate as well too.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about FHA and VA and getting government approval on all of those things. Which of all of these things that we have talked about, which is the most common?
FHA and conventional are probably the two most common types of loans. VA is still very prevalent. But those would be the three, but by far conventional and FHA.
And you had mentioned IRS documents, tax documents again, and to me, that just kind of signals, boy, it's yet another sign that if I have my act together, I'm going to be way more prepared. If I already have all of those documents, right, copies of my tax documents, for example, I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's about preparation, it's about engaging with a loan officer who is active in the market and is familiar and versed with some of these loan programs, so that's a big thing as well. But you're right, just being prepared, and if you're out house hunting, that you have your pre-approval, again, just basic 101, because the longer this goes, it could start to snowball. And so what happens is now we're going, we're a month plus, right?
Right.
And so now it goes to government employees not getting paid. Does this snowball into, getting behind on your payments? And that's what we saw, 15 years ago, where the bad actors or the bad loans started to snowball in the economy, and that affected all the people versus indirect layoffs, and it just kind of escalating and snowballing. So hopefully it doesn't get there. Right now we're just talking about loan programs, but if this goes substantially, into months,
Right.
then does it affect the economy in a larger scale? And that's the question.
Okay, I can see somebody imagining to themselves, well, wait a minute, I'm dealing with a local person, a local lender. Well, trust me, they don't have a vault full of money for your particular home loan, right? It all it comes from somewhere.
Yeah, everything for the most part is insured by the federal government,
Right.
whether that's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and those are conventional loans. So yes, more so than 15 years ago, most everything is either directly, either VA, FHA, or indirectly through Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, touched by the federal government
Sure.
in some capacity.
So I bring that up because if I'm sitting across the table from a local bank, a local lender, I think they're far more likely to understand. You talked about maybe being late for some payments or something like that. I would think they would be far more understanding than somebody, say, from 1-800-WHO-CARES.
Yeah, so to me, the benefit of the local lender is the transparency. They're gonna, from my experience, you're gonna know if there's problems up front
Right.
sooner than later, which
Right.
is a big thing. Again, local lenders, we all work in a community where we see each other, and so
Right.
there's credibility versus an online bank where they're just gonna try and string it along to see what, throw
Sure.
it against the wall, see what sticks type
Right.
mentality. So you don't get that as much here. But that's the importance of working with a reputable real estate company, a reputable agent, reputable lender that you've gotten recommended by your friends and family that have been in the business. So that goes a long way.
Local, local, local. That's exactly why I brought it up. All right, how do we do that? How do we work with Voigt Johnson?
Online at VoigtJohnson.com or 320-774-2400.
Brandon, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You can read my mind.